You've seen the show, you've debated the ending, and you've definitely thought about what you'd do for that prize money. Squid Game took the world by storm, becoming a global phenomenon. But as the credits rolled, one giant question lingered in everyone's mind. Could this actually be real? Is there a dark, hidden history behind these deadly children's games? Today, we're diving deep to uncover the truth. First off, let's get the big answer out of the way. No, there is no historical record of a real-life underground tournament where hundreds of people were eliminated in deadly versions of children's games for a massive cash prize. The story of Squid Game is a work of fiction, born from the brilliant and slightly twisted mind of its creator, Hwang Dong-hyuk. So, where did this incredible idea come from? The inspiration is actually a fascinating mix of personal experience, social commentary, and a deep love for classic survival stories. Hwang Dong-hyuk first came up with the concept way back in 2008. At the time, he and his family were facing serious financial struggles. He spent his days in comic book cafes, reading stories like Battle Royale and Liar Game. These Japanese manga famously feature characters forced into high-stakes, life-or-death situations. You can see the influence clearly. Battle Royale pits a class of high school students against each other on a deserted island, forced to fight to the death until only one remains. Sound familiar? The core concept of a deadly game with a single survivor is a direct parallel. Similarly, Liar Game involves contestants competing in psychological games to win an enormous sum of money, preying on their desperation and ability to deceive. But Squid Game isn't just a copy. What makes it unique is its distinctly Korean flavor and its powerful social commentary. Hwang was deeply affected by the growing debt crisis and the widening gap between the rich and the poor in South Korea. He saw how extreme capitalism was pushing people to their absolute limits, forcing them into desperate situations where they might feel they have no other choice. He imagined a scenario so extreme that people would willingly risk their lives for a chance to escape their financial nightmare. This is the core of the show's emotional power. It's not just about the gruesome games. It's about why someone would agree to play them in the first place. The characters aren't just random people. They represent different facets of a society struggling with debt, inequality, and a loss of hope. Gihan's gambling addiction, Sang-woo's fall from grace, and Sebayok's desperate fight for her family are all reflections of real-world struggles. Now, let's talk about the games themselves. Red light, green light, the Dalgona Candy Challenge, tug-of-war. These aren't just random activities. They were chosen specifically because they are simple, traditional Korean children's games that almost everyone grew up playing. Hwang wanted to create a horrifying contrast between the innocence of childhood and the brutal reality of the competition. The name of the show, Squid Game, or Ojeongneo Game in Korean, is also a real game. It was a popular, physically demanding game played by kids in the 1970s and 80s in South Korea, including Hwang himself. It was his personal favorite. The game is played on a court drawn in the shape of a squid. The attackers try to hop through the squid's body to reach the head, while the defenders try to push them out of the lines. It's a game of territory and aggression, making it the perfect, symbolic final battle for the show. The visual design of the show is another key element. The vibrant, almost childish colors of the maze-like staircases and the game arenas create a surreal, dreamlike atmosphere. This wasn't an accident. The design was meant to evoke a sense of fantasy and escape, lulling the contestants and the audience into a false sense of security before the horror unfolds. The guards in their pink jumpsuits and geometric masks add to this feeling of anonymity and dehumanization. They aren't people. They are faceless components of a system, just like the contestants are reduced to numbers. The journey to get Squid Game made was almost as dramatic as the show itself. For over a decade, Hwang Dong-hyuk pitched his script, but studios repeatedly rejected it. They told him the concept was too grotesque, too unrealistic, and too complex for audiences. The idea of people being so desperate for money that they'd risk death was considered too far-fetched. But then, the world changed. The global financial climate worsened. Debt became a universal problem, and the gap between the ultra-wealthy and the rest of us grew wider than ever. Suddenly, Hwang's unrealistic story started to feel eerily plausible. A world where entertainment and human suffering become indistinguishable and where the desperation of the many becomes the spectacle for the few. It's a fictional story, but its roots are buried deep in the real-world anxieties and inequalities that define our time. And that, perhaps, is even scarier than a real-life Squid Game. Thanks for watching. If you found this deep dive interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the stories behind your favorite shows. Let me know in the comments what you think the most powerful message of Squid Game is. See you next time.